Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you. Why don't we go ahead and get into a comfortable posture for meditation? Just take a moment to settle into the body. You've all probably been out and about during the day, and there's probably some residual energy moving around the body in some way. You might just check in and see what that is. You don't need to change it or fix it. It just is what it is. And likewise, you might check in with the mind, see what's going on in the mind, how that's moving around. Maybe there's some pattern to your thought, something that you're a little stuck on. Maybe there's some emotion. Just letting that be. You might also take a couple of deep breaths and letting the exhale lengthen. It's the way of signaling the body that it's time to calm down. And on your own time, you can let that go and just come into presence. You might begin by letting attention rest on the breath as it moves throughout the body. You might take a moment to really feel what the breath is like for you in this moment. You really try and be fully present with it, get an understanding of what it is. You might notice if your perception of the breath changes over the course of this meditation. It might have a shape to it or a feel to it. Might be composed of particular types of tactile sensations. And however it shows up in this moment, just maybe take note. And sometimes what happens when we sit down to meditate, that the mind gets a bit of momentum to it, to resting attention on the breath. And when that happens, sometimes we can pick up more detail, see more little facets of the breath, more sensations. You might notice if you can see a bit more deeply, more clearly now than you did at the beginning. See if the picture is fuller and richer. You might check in to see where your effort level is at. There's a sweet spot of effort in meditation. If there's too much, the mind gets tight and maybe agitated and uncomfortable. If there's too little, the mind wanders all over the place. There's a Goldilocks zone in the middle. It's just right. It's neither one nor the other. You might check and see where you're at in relation to that. And as you continue to let attention rest on the breath, one thing that sometimes happens is that the seeming single sensation of the breath is broken up into 2 or 3 or more pieces. There might become a sequence of sensations that arise and pass away rather than just this single whole breath. Another thing that sometimes happens when you pay attention to the breath is that the plain tactile sensation that it might first appear to be starts to change into some combination of tingling and vibration and movement. Let's see if any of that is present in your experience at the moment. And sometimes we notice other senses involved besides the predominant tactile sensation of the breath. Sometimes we can notice temperature at the nostrils or in the chest cavity. Sometimes we can hear the breath if we're in a quiet place. Sometimes there's a subtle visual sensation around where the breath is. You might see if any of those are present as well. And so you might call to mind the understanding of the breath you had at the beginning of the meditation. You might compare it to how the breath is showing up now. You might note if that stayed the same or if something changed. In this moment, before we close the meditation, you might bring to mind the benefits of the practice. How that changes your life and how that change spreads to others around you. Hmm. It's very nice to see you all. Hey, Emily. Hey, Susan. It's good to see you, Chris. I have a couple of announcements before I start. Number one, next weekend, Dhamma is hosting a retreat. It's both online and in person. I believe the in-person part is in Atlanta. There's information on the website if you'd like to sign up. There's also a brunch on Saturday. And on Sunday, Dhamma normal Sunday talk will be canceled because she will be on retreat. Hmm. So my brother-in-law likes to play video games. Um, and I guess a few years ago now, he bought one of those virtual reality headsets. And he invited me over and I got to play, which was, it was very enjoyable. I remember playing a few different games, but the one that comes to mind was, I don't even remember the title, but it was this fantasy game where you were a wizard and you were fighting monsters or doing whatever. But the part I remember is that you got to like throw around fireballs. It was one of these like systems where you could track your body, so you got to like throw around stuff, and it was living out my 8-year-old self's like wildest dreams. Uh, that's a good memory. Um, but I want to use this story to illustrate something about the world that we live in. When I finished playing my game and I took off that headset, like at first blush, like the world I had been kind of immersed in and the world I entered in that moment, um, they seem quite different. That world was a world with fantasy and dragons and fireballs, and this world is a world of solidity, or at least so it feels. Um, we have this language of certainty around how we talk about this world. We have things like, or we say things like objective truth and objective reality and facts, and we talk about things and objects which have stability to them. Um, we live in the age of science where like rationality is the way we see the world, and we can talk about all sorts of like physical properties and material properties, and we can measure out the physical constants of the universe to like many decimal places, and um, we live in a time where there's lots of big governments and big organizations, and the way that those entities see the world is not subjective. It's objective. It's things are quantized, and things are kind of in the form of numbers because those things are legible. And so it's kind of like crept into our worldview, and we see this world as one of objective truth, as something solid and stable. But if you look, though, and this is kind of my contention, that the world we live in is just as virtual as that other one over there. We live in a world that's made up out of beliefs, beliefs which, on reflection or on introspection, don't really have any solidity to them. This virtual world that we live in is made up of beliefs like um, we hear people talk about politics in terms of like such certainty, like this person did this thing and therefore this person is bad, or these people are good people and these people are bad people, and it's talked about with this sense of certainty, but it's not some kind of objective truth about the world. It's just a belief, just an opinion. Mm. Money is a very important thing in our society, and it often feels very true to people that you're measured in terms of how much you're worth or how much money you have. But that too is a belief. And so much of the world that we live in is formed of a kind of social construction around all these beliefs. We believe certain things because the people around us believe them. We have beliefs about how we should act and what we should be doing with our life. Um, I should be famous, or I should have kids, or I should take care of my parents, or all these things. And when we take these beliefs as true, as something solid, as some kind of objective thing about us or about the world, well, that's where we find suffering. Um, I'm reminded of an anecdote I heard from I think it's in one of Joseph Goldstein's books. It was like the anecdote goes, there's this Zen monk in Japan or somewhere, and he's living in a cave, and he's this great artist, and he spends years like painting this picture of a tiger on the wall, and it's this very realistic picture that's, it's got its nice fangs and stuff, and he one day he goes out of the cave and to do whatever he was going to do, and he comes back in, and out of the corner of his eye, he catches the tiger in his peripheral vision, and he gets scared, right? Uh, this is a good analogy for what we do with some of these beliefs about how we should act and what we should be doing. We paint this picture, we make it up ourselves, and then we buy into it, and we get scared, or we cause ourselves suffering. This virtual world we live in is made up of like even deeper beliefs about who we are in terms of identity, our race, our gender, that sort of thing. It's made up of like identification with our body and our mind. But I mean, if you look at those two, are those like true things about the world? Like, what does it mean to be your gender or your race? Are you always completely within the bounds of whatever your understanding that is, or are you sometimes outside of that? And if you're sometimes outside of that, then isn't it at best kind of approximation? And what does it mean to be identified with this body when this body is something that changes and grows and moves and like gets old and things fall off, and just it's not always the same, and it doesn't appear in an experience in the same way either. It's always something different, as we may have seen in the meditation. And the same thing with the mind too. The mind is always different. What does it mean to be the mind if the mind is always something else? There's a quote from Pema Chodron that I like, that I have that I'll read. So talking about this kind of sort of thing, she says, we are like children building a sandcastle. We embellish it with beautiful shells, bits of driftwood and colored glass. This castle is ours, off limits to others. We're willing to attack it if others threaten to hurt it. Yet despite all of our attachment, we know that the tide will inevitably come in and sweep the sandcastle away. The trick is to enjoy it fully, but without clinging. And when the time comes, let it dissolve back into the sea. But it's often kind of a trick to do, because we don't tend to see this body or this life that we have as just a sandcastle that can kind of blow away and it can be okay. We make it into something solid. We make it into a fortress and we decorate it, as she says. We put all sorts of different beliefs on our identity, and this is us, and this is how we keep out those bad feelings. And of course, it ends up that if we do that, we cause ourselves suffering. We can go even deeper than this too. There's a kind of fundamental layer of beliefs we have about the world that seem very true or very kind of uncontroversial, but they're also beliefs. We can talk about the perception of space. There's different interesting things that can happen in meditation, and one of the things that can happen is you can see the you can have the perception of the sense of space kind of warping and changing, and this body that's within the space kind of warping and changing too. And time also is has some aspect of belief to it, because we have this idea of the past and the future, but when do we experience the past? We only experience it in the present as a form of a memory. And when do we experience the future? It's only in the present in the form of a daydream or a thought. And both of these things, the space and time, are just kind of constructs of the mind. And you can see like that which is under them, consciousness, you can see that come and go too. And so you can understand that space and time are just kind of beliefs about how the world works. You can talk about the feelings of the kind of feelings that are fundamental to our ego, the idea that I exist, or the idea that I can choose. I'm the agent of my my movement throughout the world. Those two are things that can be seen through. You can talk about sanya, the idea of kind of bringing perceptions together and making them into an object in the mind. So saying this set of sounds or thoughts or sights or whatever corresponds to one thing. That too is a belief about the world. And at the very bottom of it, perception itself is a form of belief. The kind of conventional way to describe what's happening here is to say, I see this glass. Maybe a more nuanced way would be to say something like, the perceptions of this glass are arising in this moment. But what does that actually mean? Or what does that, like, if you think about that, what's arising in this moment is the perceptions. What's not arising in this moment is the glass. And this is always true. What's always arising is the perception. There's never any direct contact with the glass. So you never directly contact the source of those perceptions. So it's just the mind's kind of guess as to what's behind that. And this is true of everything. Everything that we see or feel or hear or perceive in any way. Even your feelings of you are just the mind's guess as to what the world is. All this is a virtual reality that the mind creates. We never see the world as it really is, whatever that means. All we experience is a simulation. And so it's beliefs all the way down from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. Reality is a dream. Oh. Mm-hmm. And so this is a like very powerful truth about the world. And the thing about this is that it's truth is a tool like a knife. It can be used helpfully to cut you free of your bonds of ignorance, and so be a useful thing, or it can be used or it can be misused and cause you suffering. You can cut your finger or something. So this truth can be helpful and lead you to freedom, or it can be misunderstood. And I want to talk about some of the ways it can be misunderstood and maybe get out in front of them. I think one response to hearing this truth is nihilism, the idea that everything is virtual or empty, so nothing really matters. But the idea that nothing really matters is itself a belief. So that misunderstanding comes about from not seeing it fully. Another response could be aversion or fear. If somebody has something that's very precious to them, perhaps some kind of relationship with a loved one or something, and they hear that this is empty, and that can be like very unpleasant. But I'm not saying that nothing matters. I'm not saying that nothing is important. I'll get to this in a moment, but the idea is that you have both this idea, you live in this world of belief, but you at the same time you see the emptiness of those beliefs. It's not just live in the emptiness and discard what you think about the world. The analogy I have for this is, I have two little nephews, and they're of the age where they do a lot of kind of imaginative play. So, when I go up and see them, they might ask me to, play superheroes with them or something like that. And there's a couple of different ways that I could respond to this. I could say, okay, I'll play superheroes with you, and then buy into that story and like pretend I am actually the superhero. And that would just be like, that would be silly. Like that would end poorly for everyone. And so likewise, when you live in this world that is also kind of constructed and virtual in a way, you can buy into the story, and perhaps it'll turn out well for you, but it might turn out very poorly too. So that's really not the best way to go. And again, if they came to me and wanted to play superheroes, another option I could take would be to say, no, this is made up. I don't want to do this. This is just made up. But that wouldn't be very good either. Like I want to play with them, and I want to have a good time with them, and I want them to be happy. Likewise, if you are living your life, the answer is not to just say, this is all made up. I'm not going to engage with it. That's not any kind of life at all. The answer is both. The answer is to say to my nephews, yes, I'll play with you and play with them, but know that it's a story. That's the way it is with this. I think that's the best way to be. It's to understand that we do live in this world of belief, understand that we do live in this world of story, and to communicate with anyone or to connect with anyone, you need to live in that world as well, but you don't have to buy into it. You can just take it for what it is, play the game. And if it comes to the point where, whatever set of beliefs that is kind of going on is not helpful to you or those around you, let them go and find another set. And so I also wanted to talk about what you are in the understanding where there is this world of beliefs, but it's empty. I'll see how this goes. Often, I think what comes across when people talk about this sort of thing is, maybe not often, but sometimes what comes across is that you are nothing, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that's the way to understand this. You are something. There is experience. There is something to this human life that we're living. It's just that what you are is unconstrained. It's not it's not locked into the story you're telling yourself about what you are and how you should move in the world. You're not just this solid, stable self with the kind of continuity that you might appear to at first glance, appear to have at first glance. How you show up in the world is ephemeral and entirely dependent on the circumstances. There's a candle back here that I think is a good offers a good analogy. If you look at this candle from far enough away, it appears to be a solid, stable point of light. But if you come up close and you examine what it really is, you'll notice that the candle flame is always flickering back and forth. It's always being moved about by the world. The wind blows one way, the candle flame blows that way. The wind blows the other way, the candle flame blows the other way. So too are we. So too is this sense of self. If someone comes up to you and tells a joke, what happens is you respond with happiness and laughter. If you walk out to your car and the tire is flat, what happens is you respond by fixing the tire or airing up the tire. If you see a flower on the side of the road, what happens is this thing that you are responds with joy or something along those lines. It's ephemeral. It's this constant kind of shifting flow of different aspects of your psyche interacting with the world in different ways. There's a lovely quote that I have from the Diamond Sutra describing what you are in this kind of context. Like a falling star, like a bubble in the stream, like a flame in the wind, like frost in the sun, like a flash of lightning or a passing dream, so should you understand the world of ego. So what you are is this flow, and it doesn't have any kind of solidity whatsoever to it. And when this belief that we have in the beliefs of the world drops away and the emptiness is seen, the flow becomes effortless, right? When we have all these beliefs about how we should be, there's resistance to the world. Sometimes we don't like how we are and we want it to be different. When our ideas about how the world should be drop away, then that resistance drops away too. So what you are underneath all those beliefs is that effortless flow. When you are unconstrained in that way, this flow that you are moves only with kindness. The beliefs we have about the world are a way of separating ourselves from the world or attempting to separate ourselves from the world. It's a way to say, I am this and I am this way. And this other thing over here is that, and it is that way. And it kind of appears as I think of them as like a wound in our psyche, that separation. And when you buy into those beliefs, you're kind of constantly poking at all those wounds and they can't close. But when you let that go, your kind of psychological wounds heal and you don't hurt in the psychological sense anymore. You don't want to hurt others either. Your psyche is complete and whole, and your nature underneath all those beliefs that you have about yourself is that of perfect peace. And from this place of peace, this place of not needing the world to be different, from this place of being okay, this kind of fundamental okayness wants to spread out into the world. It sees other beings that don't feel the same way. It wants to spread to them. And so what you are underneath all those beliefs is this force of kindness that radiates out into the world. Practicing the Dharma involves seeing the truth about the world. And not that I've seen all the truth there is to be seen, but of the truth that I've seen about the world, I think this is it's probably the most impactful truth, and it's definitely my favorite on a personal level. I think back to myself. I spent many years like under like a great deal of weight of all these stories I told about myself, and I've told positive stories about myself, but I think for the most part, they were pretty negative. And, at that point in my life, I didn't understand this truth about the world, but what was under there, under all the like negative beliefs I had about myself, was that inherent kindness, and that peace. If I could give one one thing to everyone, it would be like that ability to see that in themselves. Um, so I hope that's available to folks next time there is some judgment or self-criticism. What you are underneath all of that is kindness. That's what I would offer.